GCTV recently met with the CEOs of Lacrosse Global Fund Services, who highlighted the response of fund administrators and institutional investors to the current market conditions and the Madoff scheme. Stuart Pfeffer says one result post-Madoff is an increase in the use of independent fund administrators by institutional investors.
Independent fund administration used to be a highly desirable thing. Now, for many institutional investors in particular, it's simply required. We are seeing funds with tremendous capabilities in-house, large established players, look at independent administration for the first time in a very long time. New launches are coming to market with the assumption that they must have independent administration. So that's certainly one thing. The fund-of-funds industry is facing a lot of pressure over Madoff because a lot of the money that was in Madoff's funds came through fund-of-funds and other kinds of allocators. They are having to spend a lot of time explaining their due diligence practices and convincing investors of the value they add in that process. So it's definitely changed the way in which investment mandates are placed and the way in which subscriptions are raised.
Chris Kundra warns that investors also now can't rely entirely on regulators, meaning they are focusing more on due diligence.
They have certainly turned up in terms of their demands around due diligence. I think the lesson here is not only around independent administration, but that regulators themselves really can't, you can't depend on the regulators themselves to look out for everything. Madoff, as you're aware, while it wasn't necessarily a hedge fund, was certainly regulated by the SEC, yet there was certainly an issue in that case. So I think they've really turned up not only on the investor side, but also on the operational side, their capabilities around due diligence.
Pfeffer noted that cost-cutting is increasingly important for established funds in the wake of the economic crisis, and new launches have less money to spend on operations.
It's increasingly important for two reasons. Number one, established funds have seen asset levels drop. Even those with decent performance have been facing redemptions. With reduced assets, you have reduced fees, and with reduced fees, you have less ability to cover infrastructure. So ensuring that the fund's investment activity can be supported in a cost-effective way is increasingly important. For new launches, the current crisis has meant that launch capital is increasingly hard to come by. And so launches are a good bit smaller, and there's just less money available for spending on middle office and operations and all kinds of things. So managers are looking for ways of being able to support that kind of activity with a variable cost model so they can spend on just what they need now, and as their needs increase, their costs increase proportional to their ability to support it.
Lacrosse Global Fund Services, which operates around the world, has noticed a consistent response to the recession at funds across the globe.
I think this is probably the first downturn we've ever seen where it's been fairly uniform. There's been an effective shift away from long-short equity strategies towards taking advantage of more distressed opportunities, taking advantage of macro strategies that play a large part in terms of trying to find opportunities in this current market.
Most fund managers have experienced redemptions because investors themselves are scrambling for cash. Pfeffer, though, says things are finally starting to look up.
Even managers with good performance have seen redemptions. It's driven largely by liquidity needs of the investors themselves. They are for a variety of reasons, some of them having to do with their own operational requirements, some of them having to do with other investment commitments, in need of cash. And a significant part of the industry is currently under either suspended redemptions or gates. So that has that's only increased the liquidity constraints facing the investor. As a result of that, they're taking money out anywhere they can find it, and have been for months. We are only now just beginning to see that really slow down, and we're beginning to see early signs of investors coming back in.
Lacrosse Global Fund Services says it offers a one-stop shop for funds' operational and administrative needs. For GCTV, I'm Christopher Golke.